The colonel slammed his fist on the table. Get me air support now. Any jet will do. Just get something fast in the sky. But when the first aircraft arrived, he froze completely. It wasn't a sleek fighter jet. It was an old A-10 Warthog. And the pilot was a woman he thought he'd never see again. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The emergency lights painted the command center blood red. Voices overlapped in urgent chaos. Screens flashed warnings. Radio static mixed with desperate calls for help. Colonel James Mason stood in the center of it all, watching his carefully planned operation fall apart. Status, he barked. Lieutenant Harris looked up from his console, sweat on his forehead. Sir, Marine Unit Tango 7 is trapped in the canyon. Enemy forces have them surrounded. They're running out of ammunition. Mason grabbed the tactical display. Red enemy markers completely circled the blue friendly marker. His jaw tightened. How long can they hold? Best estimate? 10 minutes, sir. Maybe less. 10 minutes. Mason had seen enough combat to know what that meant. Tango 7 had maybe one chance. Maybe. He spun toward his air operations officer. Captain Davis, air support options. Now. Davis typed rapidly, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Sir, checking all available assets. F-16 squadron is 90 minutes out. F-18s are refueling in Qatar. Apache helicopters are grounded for maintenance inspection. 90 minutes. Mason's voice rose. Those Marines will be dead in 10. What else do we have? Sir, I'm checking everything. Wait, there's a training flight returning to base. F-15 Strike Eagle. Distance? 45 minutes, sir. Mason slammed his fist on the table. Still too far. Keep looking. The radio crackled with Tango 7's voice. Gunfire echoed in the background. Command, this is Tango 7. We're taking casualties. We need air support immediately. Repeat, immediately. Mason grabbed the microphone. Tango 7, air support is en route. Hold your position. Sir, we're almost out of ammunition. We can't hold much longer. Mason released the microphone and turned to his staff. His face was stone. Find me an aircraft. I don't care what it is. Any jet will do. I don't care if it's from a museum. Just get something over that canyon in the next 5 minutes. The room erupted in frantic activity. Officers called every airfield within range. Davis pulled up every aircraft status report in the database. Sir, a junior officer called out. There's an A-10 at Forward Base Delta. It's fueled and armed. Mason waved his hand dismissively. An A-10. That thing is ancient. How fast can it get there? According to the flight computer, 12 minutes, sir. 12 minutes is too slow. Keep looking for jets. Real jets. Sir, with respect, the A-10 is specifically designed for close air support in situations exactly like this. I said real jets, Lieutenant. The A-10 is a relic from Vietnam. We need speed and modern weapons systems. Davis looked up from his screen. Sir, that A-10 might be our only option. Everything else is too far away. Mason shook his head. No. There has to be something faster. An F-16, an F-18, anything modern. The communications officer suddenly straightened in his chair. Sir, I'm picking up a transmission. An aircraft has just taken off from Forward Base Delta. What aircraft? Transponder identifies it as an A-10, sir. Call sign. The officer paused, his face going pale. Sir, the call sign is Shadow. The command center went silent. Several older officers looked up sharply. Mason felt ice run down his spine. Shadow? That call sign was retired. Sir, the transponder is definitely broadcasting Shadow. And the aircraft is heading directly toward Tango 7's position. Mason's mind raced. Shadow. That was impossible. That pilot had been grounded years ago. Dismissed from service. It couldn't be the same person. He grabbed the radio. Unknown A-10, this is Colonel Mason. Identify yourself immediately. Static. Shadow, if that's really your call sign, respond now. More static. Then a voice came through. Female. Calm. Professional. Colonel, this is Shadow. Tango 7 needs help. I'm 9 minutes out. Mason's hand trembled slightly on the microphone. He knew that voice. After all these years, he still knew that voice. Shadow, you are not authorized for this mission. Return to base immediately. Colonel, we both know Tango 7 doesn't have time for authorization procedures. That's a direct order. RTB now. The woman's voice remained steady. Sir, you said any jet will do. I'm not a jet. But I'll do better than any jet ever could. Before Mason could respond, she cut the transmission. Davis stared at the colonel. Sir, do you know that pilot? Mason didn't answer. He was staring at the radar screen, watching the A-10 symbol move steadily toward the canyon. Memories flooded back. Memories he'd spent years trying to forget. Harris spoke quietly. Sir, should we scramble interceptors to force her back? Mason finally found his voice. No. Let her go. Sir. I said let her go, Lieutenant. If Shadow is flying that A-10, those Marines might actually have a chance. 6 years earlier, Captain Elizabeth Cross had been the best close air support pilot in the Air Force. Her call sign, Shadow, came from her ability to appear out of nowhere when troops needed help. Mason had been her commanding officer then. He'd watched her fly missions that other pilots called impossible. She'd saved hundreds of lives. Until the day everything went wrong. A Marine unit had been trapped in hostile territory. Command decided the rescue was too risky. Enemy air defenses were too strong. The order came down, no rescue attempt. The Marines were written off as acceptable losses. Elizabeth had disagreed. Strongly. She'd taken off without authorization, flying into the most heavily defended airspace in the region. Alone. In an A-10 that everyone said was too slow and vulnerable. She'd fought her way through surface-to-air missiles and anti-aircraft fire. She'd destroyed enemy positions with surgical precision. She'd provided cover while helicopters extracted the Marines. All 17 Marines survived. Elizabeth's A-10 barely made it back, riddled with holes, one engine destroyed, but still flying. Mason had recommended her for the Medal of Honor. Command had court-martialed her instead. The charge, willful disobedience of direct orders. Unauthorized use of military aircraft. Reckless endangerment. Elizabeth had stood at attention during the hearing, her face expressionless, and said 6 words that Mason would never forget. I'd do it again. Always. They dismissed her from service. Stripped her rank. Banned her from flying military aircraft. Mason had tried to fight the decision. He'd argued. He'd written letters. He'd made enemies in high places. Nothing worked. Elizabeth had walked away from the Air Force without looking back. And Mason had lived with the guilt ever since. Now she was back. Flying an A-10 that shouldn't exist. Using a call sign that should be retired. Breaking the same rules she'd been punished for breaking before. And Mason stood in the command center, 6 years older, watching it happen again. Davis touched his arm. Sir. Are you all right? Mason blinked. What? Yes. I'm fine. You know this pilot. It wasn't a question. Yes, Mason said quietly. I know her. The radar operator called out. Sir, Shadow is entering the combat zone. She's dropped to extremely low altitude. I'm barely tracking her. Mason moved to the radar display. The A-10's blip was moving through the canyon at treetop level, weaving between terrain features. How is she navigating that terrain at that speed? Harris asked. An older pilot, Major Reynolds, spoke up. She's not using GPS or radar, son. She's flying visual. Reading the terrain with her eyes. It's a lost art. That's insane. In combat conditions? That's Shadow, Reynolds said quietly. She flies by instinct. I've never seen anything like it. The radio crackled. Command, this is Tango 7. We can hear an aircraft. Is that our air support? Mason grabbed the microphone. Tango 7, affirmative. A-10 Warthog inbound on your position. A-10. Thank God. We're down to our last magazines. Shadow's voice cut in on the frequency. Tango 7, this is Shadow. I have visual on your position. I count 15 enemy vehicles. Confirm. Shadow, confirm 15 vehicles. They're closing in from 3 sides. Copy. Mark your position with smoke. Stay low. This is going to be danger close. Mason watched the radar. The A-10 was approaching the enemy position from an impossible angle, using a narrow canyon approach that no modern jet could navigate. Then he heard it. Even through the radio, even from miles away, he heard it. BRRRT. The sound of the GAU-8 Avenger cannon. 70 rounds per second of depleted uranium hitting targets. The most distinctive sound in military aviation. Direct hit, Tango 7 called. 3 vehicles destroyed. That was perfect accuracy. Shadow's calm voice, Tango 7, stay down. Coming around for second pass. Mason listened as the battle unfolded. Each pass, Shadow destroyed enemy positions with precision that seemed impossible. Each time, she flew closer to the ground, putting herself at greater risk. Sir, the radar operator said. Shadow is taking fire. I'm seeing damage indicators on her aircraft. How bad? Unknown, sir. But she's still flying. Still attacking, Reynolds corrected. She won't break off until every enemy position is neutralized. BRRRT. BRRRT. Tango 7's voice filled with emotion. Command, all enemy vehicles destroyed. Shadow took them all out. We're secure. Mason felt tension drain from his shoulders. Tango 7, extraction helicopters are inbound. ETA 20 minutes. Roger, command. And please, tell Shadow thank you. She saved our lives. Mason keyed his microphone. Shadow, this is command. Nice work. Return to base for debrief. Silence. Shadow, acknowledge. The radar operator looked up. Sir, Shadow's aircraft is heading south. Not toward any of our bases. Track her. Sir, she's dropped below radar coverage. I've lost her. Mason stared at the empty spot on the radar where the A-10 had been. Just like before. She'd appeared when needed, completed the mission perfectly, and disappeared. Davis asked, Sir, shouldn't we send interceptors to locate her? No, Mason said. Let her go. But sir, she flew an unauthorized mission. She needs to face consequences. Mason turned to face Davis. His expression was hard. She just saved 17 Marines, Captain. What consequences exactly should she face for that? Davis fell silent. Mason looked back at the radar screen. Besides, we'd never find her. Shadow doesn't want to be found. 2 hours later, Mason was in his office filing reports when his phone rang. Colonel Mason, this is Tower Control. Sir, you need to see this. See what? An A-10 just landed. No flight plan filed. No radio contact. It just appeared and touched down on runway 2. Mason felt his heart rate spike. I'm on my way. He drove to the flight line faster than regulations allowed. When he arrived, he saw the A-10 parked near the main hangar. Emergency crews surrounded it. Security personnel had established a perimeter. Mason pushed through the crowd. And then he saw the pilot. She stood beside the A-10, helmet in hand. Brown hair pulled back in a tight bun. Flight suit worn and faded. She was older than he remembered, her face showing lines that hadn't been there 6 years ago. But her eyes were the same. Steady. Unafraid. Elizabeth Cross. Shadow. For a moment, neither of them moved. Neither spoke. They just looked at each other across 6 years of silence and regret. Then Mason walked forward slowly. When he reached her, he came to attention and saluted. Elizabeth returned the salute, surprise flickering across her face. Captain Cross, Mason said formally. Welcome back. I'm not a captain anymore, sir. They took that away, remember? You'll always be Captain Cross to me. Elizabeth's jaw tightened. I shouldn't be here. I just wanted to return the A-10 to military property. Then I'll go. Go where? Does it matter? Mason gestured at the damaged aircraft. The bullet holes. The scorched metal. The systems that should have failed but somehow kept working. You flew an unauthorized combat mission. Yes, sir. You engaged enemy forces without clearance. Yes, sir. You saved 17 Marines. Elizabeth met his eyes. Yes, sir. And you're not sorry? No, sir. I'm not. Mason felt something crack inside him. All the years of guilt. All the regret. All the anger at a system that punished heroism. Neither am I, he said quietly. Elizabeth blinked. Sir. I should have fought harder for you 6 years ago. I should have made them understand that what you did was right. I failed you. Colonel, you tried. You did everything you could. It wasn't enough. Mason took a breath. Elizabeth, I need to tell you something. Something I should have said years ago. Sir. You were right. Command was wrong. That rescue 6 years ago. It should have been authorized. Those Marines deserve to be saved. And you. His voice caught. You were the best pilot I ever commanded. Losing you was the biggest mistake the Air Force ever made. Elizabeth's eyes shimmered. Sir, I'm not finished. Today, when I heard your call sign, when I realized it was you flying that A-10, I froze. Do you understand? I completely froze. You seemed fine on the radio. I was terrified. Not of what you might do. But of losing you again. Of watching you risk everything and knowing I couldn't protect you this time either. Elizabeth's voice was soft. I don't need protection, sir. I just need to fly. Mason looked at the damaged A-10. Where did you get this aircraft? I bought it. Surplus auction. Spent 6 years fixing it up, keeping it combat ready. Why? Because I knew someday, somewhere, someone would need help. And I wanted to be ready. You've been flying unauthorized rescue missions, haven't you? Elizabeth didn't answer, but her expression told him everything. Mason made a decision. Come with me. In his office, Mason closed the door and gestured for Elizabeth to sit. She remained standing. Elizabeth, I'm going to ask you a question. And I need an honest answer. Always, sir. If I order you to stop flying these unauthorized missions, will you obey? Elizabeth met his eyes without hesitation. No, sir. Even if I threaten you with arrest? Even then. Why? Because 6 years ago, I learned something, sir. I learned that sometimes following orders means letting good people die. And I can't do that. I won't. Mason nodded slowly. That's what I thought you'd say. Are you going to arrest me? No. Elizabeth's eyes widened. Sir. Mason opened his desk drawer and pulled out a folder. I'm going to offer you a deal instead. What kind of deal? The unofficial kind. He slid the folder across the desk. For the past 6 years, there have been over 30 unexplained rescues in combat zones. Situations where official help couldn't arrive in time. But somehow, an unknown A-10 showed up anyway. Elizabeth said nothing. I've done research. Every single one of those rescues had the same pattern. Low-altitude approach. Surgical precision. Minimal ammunition used for maximum effect. And the pilot always disappeared afterward. Sir, I don't know what you're implying. I'm implying that someone has been out there, flying shadow missions, saving lives that command wrote off. Mason leaned forward. I'm implying that someone has been doing the job the military should have been doing all along. If that's true, that pilot would be court-martialed. Not if they had authorization. Elizabeth frowned. What? Mason pulled out another document. This is a Special Operations Authorization. It creates a new position, Emergency Response Pilot. The pilot operates independently, responds to crisis situations without waiting for official approval, and answers directly to me. Sir, Command would never approve that. Command doesn't know about it. And they won't. This stays between us. Elizabeth stared at the document. You're offering me my wings back. I'm offering you the freedom to do what you've been doing anyway. But with official protection. With proper maintenance for your aircraft. With intelligence support so you know where help is needed. Why would you risk your career for this? Mason stood and walked to the window. Because 6 years ago, I watched the best pilot I ever knew get destroyed by a system that cared more about rules than results. I've regretted it every day since. He turned back to face her. Today, when I heard your call sign, I froze. Not just for a moment. I completely froze. Because I realized that for 6 years, you've been out there alone, risking everything, with no support and no backup. And I could have helped you. Should have helped you. Sir. I'm not making that mistake again, Elizabeth. Take the authorization. Keep flying. Keep saving lives. Just let me help you do it. Elizabeth picked up the document, her hands trembling slightly. This is real. Official? It's as official as I can make it without alerting command. You'll be ghost personnel. No official roster. No public record. Just you, your A-10, and emergency calls that need answering. And when command finds out, then I'll deal with the consequences. Just like you've been dealing with consequences for 6 years. Elizabeth was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked up at Mason. 6 years ago, you recommended me for the Medal of Honor. Yes. They gave me a court-martial instead. Yes. And now you're risking everything to give me back my wings. Yes. Elizabeth's eyes glistened. Thank you, sir. Mason extended his hand. Welcome back, Captain Cross. Or should I say, Shadow. She shook his hand firmly. Shadow works fine, sir. Over the next week, Mason worked quietly to establish the protocols for Shadow's operations. He set up a secure communication channel that fed her emergency calls before they went through official channels. He arranged for maintenance support from mechanics he trusted. He even found a secure hangar for her A-10. Elizabeth adapted quickly to the new arrangement. She kept her same routine, monitoring military frequencies, staying ready to respond, and maintaining her aircraft obsessively. The difference was now she had support. Davis confronted Mason one evening. "Sir, I know what you're doing." Mason didn't look up from his paperwork. "I don't know what you mean, Captain." "The emergency response authorization. The secure hangar. The combat pilot who isn't on any roster but somehow has access to our maintenance facilities." Mason set down his pen. "If you know, why bring it up?" "Because I want to help." That made Mason look up. "Help?" Davis sat down. "Sir, I've been in the Air Force for 15 years. I've worked with hundreds of pilots. And I've never seen anyone fly like Shadow. What she did for Tango 7. That was art. Pure skill combined with absolute courage." "Your point?" "My point is that if someone that talented is willing to risk everything to save lives, the least I can do is provide intelligence support. Let me monitor emergency situations. Screen them. Forward the most critical ones to Shadow before they even hit official channels." Mason studied his operations officer carefully. "You understand what you're offering? If this comes out, your career is over." "Sir, if Shadow's unauthorized missions become public, she faces prison. What's a career compared to that?" Davis leaned forward. "Besides, she was right 6 years ago. Command was wrong. Some rules deserve to be broken." Mason smiled slightly. "All right, Captain. Welcome to the conspiracy." 3 weeks later, Davis burst into Mason's office. "Sir, we have a situation." Mason looked up from his reports. "How bad?" "Special Forces team trapped behind enemy lines. Extraction impossible due to anti-aircraft coverage. Command is calling it off." "Casualties?" 6 operators. All wounded. They won't survive 24 hours without medical evacuation." Mason reached for his phone. "Get Shadow on the line." 2 minutes later, Elizabeth's voice came through the secure channel. "Shadow here. I'm listening." Davis briefed her on the situation. The Special Forces location. The enemy defenses. The anti-aircraft threat. "It's a death trap," he concluded. "No air support can get in there safely. That's why Command is abandoning the extraction." Elizabeth was quiet for a moment. Then, "Send me the coordinates." "Shadow, did you hear me? The AA coverage is absolute. Nothing can fly through that. Send me the coordinates, Captain." Mason took the phone. "Elizabeth, this is different from Tango 7. This is significantly more dangerous. Sir, 6 operators are going to die unless someone helps them. Are you ordering me not to go?" Mason closed his eyes. "No. I'm not." "Then I'm going." Shadow out. The line went dead. Davis looked at Mason. "Sir, should we stop her? Could we if we wanted to?" "No, sir. Probably not." Mason stood and grabbed his jacket. "Then let's go to the command center and watch. If Shadow's flying into hell, the least we can do is witness it." The command center was tense when Mason and Davis arrived. Screens showed the Special Forces position, completely surrounded by enemy anti-aircraft systems. "Status?" Mason asked. Harris looked grim. "Sir, official extraction has been cancelled. Command deemed it too risky. The Special Forces team has been informed they're on their own." Mason said nothing. He just watched the screens and waited. 15 minutes later, the radar operator called out. "Sir, I have an unidentified aircraft approaching the combat zone from the south." Identification. Transponder reads. "Shadow, sir." Everyone in the command center turned to look at Mason. He kept his face neutral. "Track her approach." The A-10 symbol moved steadily toward the most heavily defended airspace in the region. Surface-to-air missile batteries. Mobile anti-aircraft guns. Radar coverage that should make flight impossible. Shadow flew straight toward it. "She's crazy," someone muttered. Reynolds, the older pilot, shook his head. "She's not crazy. She's planning something." "Sir," the radar operator said. "Shadow just dropped to extreme low altitude. She's below terrain masking." "How low?" 50 feet, sir." "At that altitude, she's practically invisible to radar." The Special Forces commander's voice crackled over the radio. "Command, we can hear an aircraft. Is someone attempting extraction?" Before anyone could answer, Shadow's voice came through. "Charlie team, this is Shadow. I'm 2 minutes out. Mark your position and prepare for immediate evacuation. Shadow, be advised, enemy AA coverage is absolute. We've counted 16 separate systems." "Copy, Charlie team." "I've counted 17. Mason felt his hands grip the console. 17 anti-aircraft systems. Any one of them could destroy the A-10 in seconds. The radar operator called out positions as Shadow approached. "She's weaving through canyon systems, using terrain masking perfectly. I can barely track her movements." Then she emerged from the canyons directly over the Special Forces position. BRRRT. The first anti-aircraft position exploded. BRRRT. The second. Shadow was flying a pattern Mason had never seen before. She'd approach one AA position from below terrain masking, destroy it before they could track her, then drop back into the canyons before the other systems could acquire her. "She's hunting them," Reynolds said with awe. "Using their own coverage against them. They can't fire without risking hitting each other." One by one, the anti-aircraft positions fell. Shadow moved through the combat zone like a ghost, appearing only long enough to fire, then disappearing again. "Sir," the radar operator said. "Shadow's taken multiple hits. Damage indicators across all systems." Mason watched the screen. Shadow's aircraft symbol was surrounded by warning indicators. Hydraulic failure. Engine damage. Structural compromise. But she kept flying. Kept fighting. "Charlie team," Shadow's voice came through. She sounded strained now. "All AA positions neutralized. Extraction bird is inbound. Get ready to move. Shadow, your aircraft is heavily damaged. Break off and save yourself." "Negative. I'm staying until you're extracted." For 20 minutes, Shadow circled the position, her damaged A-10 barely flying, providing cover while the extraction helicopter came in. Finally, "Charlie team is secure. We're out." Shadow's voice, "Good. Shadow is RTB." But the radar operator shook his head. "Sir, Shadow's aircraft is losing altitude. I don't think she can make it back." Mason grabbed the radio. "Shadow, this is command. What's your status?" "I've been better, sir. Lost both hydraulic systems. Right engine is gone. Left engine is running on hope and determination. Can you reach base?" "Negative. I'm putting down in the desert." "Don't worry, I've done this before." "Shadow." "It's okay, sir. The Special Forces team is safe. That's what matters." Mason watched helplessly as the radar showed Shadow's aircraft descending toward the desert floor. Then the symbol disappeared from the screen. The command center went silent. Mason was in a helicopter within minutes, searching the desert where Shadow had gone down. Davis and Reynolds came with him. They found the A-10 2 miles from where the radar had lost her. The aircraft had been skillfully crash-landed in a relatively flat area. The landing gear was destroyed. The fuselage showed massive damage. One wing was torn nearly off. But when Mason's helicopter landed and he ran to the cockpit, Elizabeth was climbing out on her own, limping but alive. "I told you not to worry," she said with a weak smile. Mason wanted to yell at her. Wanted to tell her she was reckless and insane. But instead, he just pulled her into a hug. "You scared me," he said quietly. "Sorry, sir." "No, you're not." "No, I'm not." Davis approached, looking at the destroyed A-10. "Captain Cross, that aircraft should have killed you. How did you survive that landing?" "The A-10 is tough, Captain. It protects its pilot even when it's falling apart." Reynolds walked around the aircraft, shaking his head in amazement. "I've never seen anything like this. The structural damage alone should have made flight impossible. But you flew it for 20 minutes after engagement." Elizabeth patted the destroyed aircraft gently. "She's a good bird. Always brings me home." Mason looked at the ruined A-10. "Elizabeth, your aircraft is destroyed. You can't fly any more unauthorized missions." She met his eyes steadily. "Then I guess I'll need authorization for the next one." "What?" "Sir, you said I could be emergency response pilot. That's an official position, right?" "Yes, but..." "Then authorize me a new aircraft. Put me on the official roster. Let me do this job properly." Mason stared at her. "Do you understand what you're asking? You'd be giving up your independence. You'd be back in the system that threw you out." "No, sir. I'd be back in the system that needs me. There's a difference." Davis spoke up. "Colonel, she's right. What she did today, that wasn't just heroism. That was strategic brilliance. She took out 17 anti-aircraft positions alone. Do you know what that capability is worth? Command will never approve it." "Then don't tell Command," Elizabeth said. "Keep me as ghost personnel. But give me a proper A-10 from the active fleet. Let me do this right." Mason looked at the three of them. His operations officer. His best pilot. And a woman who'd just proven that sometimes breaking rules was the only moral choice. "All right," he said finally. "Let's do this properly. Captain Cross, you're officially back on active duty. Call sign Shadow. Emergency response pilot. You'll fly when others can't. When official help is too slow or too cautious. You'll be our last resort option." Elizabeth smiled. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet. When this eventually blows up, we're all going to prison together." Reynolds laughed. "Sounds fair to me, sir." 6 months later, Shadow had flown 12 more missions. Each time, she saved lives that Command had written off. Each time, she proved that sometimes the old ways, the slow A-10, the low-altitude approach, the pilot's instinct over computer systems, were better than modern doctrine. Mason never officially reported her existence. She remained ghost personnel, a secret shared by a small group of officers who believed in doing what was right over doing what was authorized. The Special Forces team she'd rescued sent her a gift, a patch with a simple design. An A-10 silhouette emerging from shadows. Underneath, one word, Shadow. Elizabeth wore it on every flight. One evening, Mason found her in the hangar, performing maintenance on her A-10. The new one he'd quietly requisitioned from surplus inventory. "You know," he said, "I still remember the day I froze." Elizabeth looked up from her work. "Sir. When I heard your call sign for the first time in 6 years. When I realized you were back. I completely froze. couldn't move. Couldn't think. Just stood there like an idiot while you flew off to save Tango 7. You didn't look frozen, sir. Inside I was. Because I realized something in that moment. What's that? That for 6 years, I'd been wrong. Command was wrong. The system was wrong. We punished you for being a hero. And you responded by being a hero anyway, without recognition, without support, without anything except your own conscience. Elizabeth set down her tools. Sir, let me finish. When I froze that day, it was because I saw what real courage looks like. Not following orders. Not doing what's safe or approved. But doing what's right even when everyone tells you it's wrong. He stepped closer. You've changed things, Elizabeth. Not just for those people you saved. But for all of us who've watched you fly. You've reminded us why we joined the military in the first place. Not to follow rules. But to protect people. Elizabeth's eyes were bright. Thank you, sir. That means everything to me. You've earned it. Every bit of it. As Mason walked away, he heard the sound of tools on metal as Elizabeth returned to her maintenance work. Preparing for the next mission. The next crisis. The next time someone needed help and official channels said no. And he smiled, knowing that somewhere out there, in emergency situations yet to happen, people would be saved by a pilot who refused to follow orders when orders meant letting people die. The colonel had said any jet will do. But sometimes, what you really needed wasn't a jet at all. Sometimes you needed an A-10. And a pilot brave enough to fly it when everyone else said it was impossible. 3 years later, Shadow's legend had spread quietly through military circles. Soldiers told stories of the mysterious A-10 that appeared in impossible situations. The pilot who never asked for recognition. The woman who flew when nobody else could. New pilots would ask about her. Veterans would smile and say, if you ever hear call sign Shadow, you're either very lucky or in very deep trouble. Either way, help has arrived. Mason eventually made general. His first official act was to create the Emergency Response Squadron. A unit of pilots trained in Shadow's techniques. Flying at tens when faster, newer aircraft couldn't get the job done. Elizabeth trained them all personally. Teaching them that sometimes slow is better than fast. Sometimes old is better than new. And sometimes following your conscience is better than following orders. The recruitment poster for the squadron showed an A-10 emerging from clouds. Underneath, a simple message. When official help can't arrive in time, we fly anyway. And at the bottom, smaller, Shadow Squadron. Because some things matter more than regulations. Elizabeth stood in front of that poster one day, looking at it with a slight smile. Davis walked up beside her. Thinking about the old days. Thinking about how far we've come. You changed everything, you know. The entire Air Force approach to close air support. It's all based on your methods now. Elizabeth shook her head. I just flew when people needed help. That's exactly why it worked. You didn't think about doctrine or tactics or politics. You just thought about saving lives. Isn't that what we're all supposed to do? Davis smiled. It is. But you're the one who remembered it when everyone else forgot. As they walked away from the poster, an alarm sounded. Emergency call. Special forces pinned down. Official extraction deemed too risky. Elizabeth and Davis looked at each other. Shadow Squadron, Davis said into his radio. You're cleared for launch. Within minutes, 4 A-10s were in the air. Leading them was Elizabeth in her distinctive aircraft, the one she'd flown for years, the one she'd crashed and rebuilt, the one that had proven that some things, loyalty, courage, determination, never became obsolete. As they flew toward the crisis, Elizabeth remembered the day Colonel Mason had frozen. The day everything changed. The day she'd realized that sometimes being right meant being alone. But she wasn't alone anymore. Behind her flew 3 other pilots. Veterans who'd learned that rules had their place, but saving lives came first. Shadow Squadron. Flying when others couldn't. Arriving before official help. Saving lives that doctrine said couldn't be saved. And leading them all was a pilot with a call sign from the past and a mission for the future, prove that some things matter more than regulations. The colonel had said any jet will do. He'd been wrong. What they'd needed was something better than any jet. They'd needed Shadow.